If you have a strange or scary story, consider sending it into the channel by going to astheravendreams.com and clicking the button to do so. And of course, thank you. One of my favorite things to do as a kid was go to the carnival or the local festivals in our area. The only thing I didn't like about them was when we had to leave. I loved the rides, the games, even if I rarely won. I loved the mazes and the fun houses they had. All of it. I have a lot of great memories from them, but this one that I'd like to tell you about, it was one of my less favorable memories. I believe I was around 8 or 9 at the time. I felt that I was very independent for my age, even if my parents didn't allow it. They wouldn't let me just wander off, but that didn't mean that I never tried. I wasn't an only child, so I would often try to get their permission for a certain ride or game, and then just run off to wait in line. So, the trip this year was no different to me. I would ask for money for what I wanted to do and take off. My parents following close behind me, and telling me to come back and wait with them. Every year I would try my hand at the bottle game. I would fail because it's not like I was very strong, but I still enjoyed it. It was like a goal for me every year to try and beat that game and win one of those giant stuffed animals. We'd probably been there for a good hour or so when we found ourselves in the Halloween part of the grounds. They had some games, a few spooky rides, as well as a children's haunted house. I didn't scare easily, so I wanted to check it out too. Once again, I ran to the line to wait, and my mother slowly caught up with me. It was just going to be the two of us going in, and we got in immediately, and it was pitch dark in there. They had some eerie background music playing, and from ahead, I could hear people screaming. One part had these flaps you had to walk through that was also a corn maze. It was hard enough with it being dark, but the flaps kind of made you disoriented, and you could easily get turned around, which is what seemed to happen. I was walking alongside my mother until I hit a dead end and backed into her. She then grabbed my hand and we continued on walking through the maze. Once through, I let go of her hand again and continued towards the exit, where she once again grabbed my hand. I obliged, as we were leaving the haunted house anyways. But as we exited, I looked up and realized that the hand I was holding was not my mom's, but was actually a different woman's. I let go and she laughed, saying that my mom had asked her to keep an eye on me. I'm sure I had a skeptical look on my face, but she knelt down and assured me that she was a very good friend with Rhonda, my mom's name. To me, the fact that she knew my mom's name immediately assured me that this was legit. There was no way that it could have been a lie knowing that. I asked her for her name, and she said it was Charlotte and that she used to go to school with my mom. Again, everything seemed to check out in my little mind, so I went with it. I asked where she was now, and Charlotte said that she may still be in the house, but that we could catch up with her after we were finished. Then, she asked me if I wanted to play some more games. It was seeming like I was going to have exclusivity to Charlotte, and that I would get to play all the games I wanted to without the delays. That was something that I was very quickly on board for. She grabbed my hand and we walked off to our next destination. She actually let me play a lot of games, but some of the rides she wouldn't let me go on. After we explored for a while, she then asked me if I wanted something to eat, and we headed to all the various food booths. We always had dinner before we went to the carnival, so I wasn't very hungry, but I didn't dare say no to the funnel cake that she offered. As we sat and ate, she pulled out her phone and said that it was my mom calling. She started talking and told her about all we had done so far, and then it appeared that she was asked a question. She looked at me and asked, Your mom wants to know if you just want to stay with me for the night, and she can come pick you up in the morning? I remember asking if I can, and she laughed, saying yes, and then told my mom that she would be seeing us tomorrow. After she was off the phone, she explained how she had a daughter just like me, but that she was much older now. She said she still had her room set up with all of the toys and kids' clothes though, so I was welcome to stay in her room. I was so excited at this point. I got to play games, go on rides, and have desserts all night. Then I was going to be able to stay at Charlotte's and have even more fun. We tossed our trash and she asked if I was ready to go. I was able to do a lot of what I wanted, and being more than satisfied, I agreed. She gently grabbed my hand like she had been, and we started walking towards the back of the carnival. There was a parking lot in the back too, but my family had parked in the front. As we got closer to the exits, I saw a man sitting on a nearby bench, hunched over and looking at his hands. He must have heard us approaching because he looked up at us, and he looked angry. As soon as he made eye contact, Charlotte let go of my hand. We got close to the exits, and she started rifling around with her purse. The man got up and walked over to us, said something to Charlotte about taking too long. At that point, she no longer appeared to be the same woman. Her voice dropped and wasn't the higher-pitched, sweet voice that she used with me. It was sharp and deep. She said something like, "Back off" to him, and I watched as she pulled out cigarettes and lit one, with her hands now shaking. This guy put his hand on my shoulder to push me forward, but I didn't budge, now becoming a bit scared. I asked who the guy was, and he said, "None of your business, let's go." I did my best to stand in place when Charlotte approached me and tried to grab my hand and pull me along too. She wasn't the soft and kind woman that first approached me, and it confused and scared me. She said that we needed to go, and I just thought back to those lessons we learned in school about strangers and how you should have a password with the loud people. The problem with this was that my family never used the password or code method. I thought it sounded really cool, but we never did it, or seemed interested in it. So I did the next best thing that I could think of. Charlotte had been calling me Katie, which was my nickname that only friends and family used. So I asked her what my name was. She tried to blow it off by saying, "We don't have time for this, Katie, it's getting late." But I kept yelling at her to tell me my name. The man started to say something, but she told him to go get in the car. As he walked away, she knelt down and said that she was sorry, but she was just tired, and said matter-of-factly that my name was Catherine. But it was the wrong answer. My name was actually Katrina, and a lot of people assume it's Catherine based on my nickname. I knew at this point that this person was lying. I started screaming that I wanted to go back, and she kept arguing that I already agreed to go with her, like it was some kind of binding contract. She grabbed my arm and started pulling me as a car pulled up beside her. I managed to step on her foot. She was wearing open-toed sandals, and she screamed at me. She let go of my arm, and I backed up, ready to run, but I stopped. To this day, I don't know why I stopped. Part of me was scared that I just hurt an adult, and that I was going to be in trouble, but I knew I needed to get away from her. I started walking backwards, back towards the carnival, when I saw a couple entering with 2 kids. It was like they knew the minute that we made eye contact. The woman approached me, and I immediately grabbed her hand and started crying. I could tell that she was taken aback, but then she asked me if I was okay. I looked back at the woman called Charlotte, and she was already getting in the car. The woman stood by me as we watched them take off, tires squealing on the way out. The woman asked me if I knew who that person was, and I said that I didn't know. I thought she was my mom's friend, but I couldn't remember ever meeting her before. She asked me if my parents were here, and I told her that I thought so, or that I hoped they hadn't left without me. I was still young. I feared that maybe Charlotte was just telling the truth and she was a friend, but maybe she was just mean. Luckily, the woman asked to pick me up, and for some reason I accepted. She at least seemed more trusting than Charlotte, and I guess since she was here with another kid, it felt right. As we walked in, she assured me that she would help me find my parents, and she told her husband that she would meet up with them afterwards. She took me to the booth where you could buy game and ride tickets in advance, instead of at each one, and she told them that she found a lost kid and that they needed to call the police. She then bought me a bottle of water and we waited on a nearby bench. She talked to me like Charlotte did, which sometimes upset me, thinking I was just going to go through it all a second time, but at the same time, she seemed different. She talked about her son, too, said that he was close to my age. As we talked, a few people approached us and asked questions about my parents. And then finally, after some time, I heard someone yell my name. I looked over and saw my parents approaching with my 2 siblings. I ran over to my mom and I didn't want to let her go. She held on to me but scolded me at the same time for running off after the haunted house. I had to explain to her how someone grabbed my hand in there and how I thought it was her. Then I explained Charlotte to her, and she confirmed that she didn't know anyone named Charlotte. They talked to the woman that stayed with me and thanked her, and then we had to give the police a statement, since it was an attempted kidnapping. By the time it was all said and done, the woman had left, and my siblings and I were falling asleep on the bench while the adults finished up. The next morning, my parents had an even longer talk with me about strangers. And finally, we agreed on a password. This way, if it ever happened again, I could use it, and I would know. Thankfully, I never had to use it. But I learned a very, very valuable lesson. Charlotte, or whoever she was, did a great job at making it all seem real. She even made sure she knew my nickname so she could talk to me. So, if something seems off, no matter your age or how much someone's story checks out, go with your gut. It's trying to tell you something for a reason. I have a pretty bad fear of heights. I've always had some slight fear, but as a kid, it was pretty irrational. I was never in a situation involving heights. Hell, the highest up I'd ever gone was on the playground climbing to go down the slide. The monkey bars, though, were out of the question. At least, my fear seemed pretty irrational. Until my family and I went to a local carnival one summer night back in the late 90s. I was about 11 at the time, and my family, which included myself, my older brother who was 14, my little sister who was 6, and my parents, went to the carnival that came near our town every year. I did love going, but I loved the games more than the rides. I remember the drive always took forever, according to my child's sense of time, but really, it was about a 45-minute drive. Anyways, I had a few of my favorite games and crafts that I liked to do, and there were a few rides that I would go on with my siblings as well. There weren't many my sister could go on yet, so one of my parents would always have to sit out to stay with her. But otherwise, one of our parents was always with us. In fact, I was always willing to go on the rides my sister wanted because those were more of the so-called kiddie rides. Ones that just slowly went in a circle or over slight bumps. Nothing that went too fast or up in the air or upside down. However, my brother was the opposite, and he loved the thrill of the roller coasters. He rode them all and would go multiple times if allowed. He always tried to get me to go on some of the rides with him so we didn't have to go alone and sit by a stranger. My mom wasn't huge on those rides either, and while my dad was, he was also a very tall guy, so some of the rides, he just couldn't get his knees in, so we couldn't go. Throughout this night, my brother, Cody, was constantly asking me to take different rides with him, but I was always saying no. But then he asked me to go on the Ferris wheel, a very large metal wheel that takes you straight up in the air, and there's nothing there to keep you in but the door. No thanks. But he begged, and talked about how it was the safest one. He said that all we had to do was sit in place and talk, and we would be fine. He even took me over to the wheel and was pointing out how they hardly moved. They didn't swing or anything of the sort, and watching them, it did make me feel a bit better about it. So I gave in, and I decided it was time to try and face my fears and take on one of the simplest rides. So we walked up to the line, waited our turn as the operator slowly turned the wheels to fill the seats. There were bench seats on each end of the cars, which made sense to keep them balanced. And he allowed us to sit in the same cars and alone. So it was just going to be me and Cody in the one car. I contemplated where to sit, wanting to both sit by my brother, knowing I would feel safer, but also part of me thought it was best to sit on the other side and make it a little more balanced. I decided to go with the latter. I sat down and tightly gripped the lap bar as I waited for it to start moving. It slowly moved and stopped as the other cars filled, each jolt making me jump. Finally, it started moving smoothly around and I tried to enjoy it. Once we got halfway to the top, I could no longer look down as it scared me too much. I looked straight up and did my best to enjoy the view of the skyline and the setting sun. Trying to distract me, Cody teased me about it not being so bad and talked about how cool the view was from the top. I tried to let it pass and enjoy the moment, but once we got to the other side of the wheel, on the descent, there was a hard jerk in the seat, causing it to swing a little harder. I heard a few people in nearby cars scream, but then they laughed. It startled me. I thought something happened to the ride, and it was enough for me to tell Cody that I wanted off. We were kids, so I don't blame him now, but he pressured me to stay. He guilt-tripped me, saying that he would have to get off too, and he wasn't ready yet, so I felt bad. I decided to stick it out, telling myself that it's a one-time deal and that I would make it for another 5 minutes or so. We went back around again, and there was another jolt as we neared the top. Cody saw my concern, and he told me that they were just letting more people on, so it was going to be a moment. Once again, I couldn't look down. It seemed to take longer than normal for them to start moving again, and I could tell because Cody was becoming impatient. Then, with another jolt, we started moving again. When we got to the descent, there was another hard jolt, and that time the car had a horrible swing to it. My anxiety was rising and fast. I told myself that I would go around once more, and if they don't stop, I would ask them to. Something wasn't right, and it was more than just my fear talking now. We went around again, and once more there was a bad lurch when we reached the top. I assumed more people were getting on and waited, but once again it seemed to take a while. Finally, it started moving again, but as we neared the top there was a loud screech, and the car lurched hard. This time the screams that I heard below were not followed by laughter, and it immediately set me off. I asked Cody what had happened, and he leaned over the seat to check. He leaned over to check, and I pushed down on my lap bar in a nervous reflex, and that's when I heard the snap, and the bar no longer had any give. I looked down at the bar and saw that the bolt had come out. That lap bar was no longer holding me in place. One thing I have not mentioned yet is that the cars didn't have any doors. They were open. That lap bar was the only thing keeping me in my seat and in the car. Now I was panicking. Cody heard the snap and looked back into the car and was trying to keep me calm. He told me to scoot to the center and to not move. He didn't have to tell me twice. I closed my eyes and tried focusing on breathing as I listened to Cody mumble something about the ride. Then, the ride lurched forward several more times. It was like someone in a car was tapping the brakes repeatedly. The ride was no longer smooth and was just filled with jerking motions. We got across the top and back on the other side, about to make our descent. But then it stopped again, and with that jolt, we heard a thud and more screaming. Cody scooted over to the side closest to the entrance and looked down. And by the look on his face, I could tell that something wasn't right. I asked him what was wrong, and he refused to say. I wanted to know what was going on, so I decided to look myself. I slowly moved towards the end. Unfortunately, it was the same side the bar broke, and looked over the side. To my horror, I saw a car close to the bottom, now sitting at an angle. The bars holding it up must have broken or come undone on one side, and the car was leaning. I could see an adult in the seat that was suspended in the air, and they were leaning over, clearly trying to hold themselves up. I immediately started to panic. Why did their car break? Where was the ride operator to help them out? I couldn't keep watching, so I went back to the center of the car and I cried. Our car didn't move for the longest time. I could tell Cody was scared too, but I couldn't help but ask him why we hadn't moved. Why were they not getting us off this thing? It felt like we were there forever, suspended in the air and nothing but a broken lap bar keeping me in place. Cody would look down and let me know that they were letting people off that were close to the ground, but for us, we were still high in the air. I know I was a kid. I was a kid afraid of heights, but I thought that that was going to be my end. I was trapped in this car way up in the sky. There were no doors or anything keeping us there, and it seemed like it wasn't moving. How are they going to get us down? Somehow, even though I could tell he was just as scared, Cody did his best to try to keep us calm. He tried to distract me by playing a word game or I Spy, and it did help. He kept my mind occupied for the most part, but since it was late September, as the sun set entirely, it started getting colder and it was making it harder for me to focus. Finally, we heard someone on one of those megaphones speaking to us. They told us that help was on the way and to remain calm. It wasn't a fast process, but finally, we saw them trying to get the fire truck into the carnival grounds and a path to clear to us. I remember when they finally got to our car. The ladder nudged the car and it set me into a panic again, knowing it wasn't secured very well. They had me come closer to them and they grabbed me and handed me to the firemen further down the ladder. Then I climbed down the rest of the way. I was never happier to be in my parents' arms. Then we watched as they got Cody out. His lap bar was fully functional and wouldn't open while suspended, so they had to break it, and eventually have him wiggle out of the top. I remember the fear coursing through me again as I could see the top of his head. The thought of him having to almost stand in that car scared the hell out of me. But shortly after, he climbed down the ladder on his own as well and ran over to us. He was shaky, obviously just as scared, but we were okay. We had been stuck on that Ferris wheel for nearly 2 hours. It certainly felt a lot longer than that, but even those 2 hours were grueling. Turns out, the Ferris wheel was pretty old, and was probably not maintained like it should have been. Several bolts were messed up, and the jolts we felt were from it getting stuck. The operator was just turning it on and off again, trying to force it to go instead of getting everyone off. He continued the ride. Thus, what caused it to finally stop in its place and not move again. Several years later, after talking to Cody and my parents about it, Cody told me that he looked down and saw our parents below who looked terrified. And he saw a girl in a car closer to the ground that looked passed out in the car with a man holding her hand. At his age, he thought she had died, and seeing our parents so scared made him think that something terrible had happened, and that we may not get out of this. That is why he had gone silent. But yet he still tried to keep us calm, and I will never forget that. The girl was okay, though. She apparently was just scared and tried to get out, but in her panic, she passed out. Cody didn't understand that at the time and just saw an unconscious woman. All in all, we made it out semi-unscathed. It was a very terrifying moment for me, and I'm honestly still afraid of heights today. Probably even worse now. But I don't blame Cody for pressuring me on the ride. I've also not heard many stories about Ferris wheels breaking down, so it's at least a relief that what I experienced is very rare. But I think I would rather not chance it and just stay away from them. Hey, so every season one of my neighboring towns has a fair that takes over the main street. The road is then blocked for the duration. There's a summer one, a winter, an autumn, and also spring fair. Each have their own specialties and themes. My friends and I go to them every year to pass the time. One year it was especially dull with few things of interest, and we were preparing to leave to go find something else to do. I noticed my friend, let's call her Gabby, was talking to a rather hippie-looking couple. I didn't say anything because she's quite the social butterfly and loves meeting new people. Katie, my other friend, and I were spending some time together at one of the stalls browsing. It was mainly random items at food stores and local produce that was brought in. I live in an area that borders the rural areas and also has a pretty large migrant community, so there's always plenty of variety. Once we were done, we grabbed some food and saw Gabby still talking to that couple. Except this time she was joined by other hippie-looking people. I don't judge how people choose to dress, I just want to make that clear, but that's the best way that I can describe how they were dressed. We walked over to say hi, and we were greeted with extremely happy, over-the-top greetings. I instantly felt uncomfortable by it, but neither of my friends did. They told us about their community where they liked to sing songs, and they told us they had a cafe in the Blue Mountains, and that we would be welcome to come. They said that we would be going home. I really don't like that kind of talk. They gave us some cookies, I chose not to eat mine just to be safe, and pamphlets about their organization. Most of it was religious dribble about suffering and how to make the world a better place. I politely said no thank you, but my other friends read it, and so I got the chance to look afterwards. After I spoke with them, we gave each other the signal that it was time to leave, and most of them said goodbye and that they hoped to see us soon. We giggled and walked to Katie's car when we noticed one of them following us. Gabby and I were creeped out, while Katie thought it was nice. So she turned around and started speaking to her, thanking them for being so nice. This cult member asked for our emails, and I said I didn't have one. I know it's dumb, but still. Katie hesitated while Gabby willingly gave over her real email address. I bring this up because it's important for later on. We got into her car. The lady with that creepy damn smile on her face pressed her face against the window, telling us that she was so excited to meet us and wanted to see us soon. We laughed about it on the way home, and we joked about how awkward it would be seeing them the year after. Our group chat got a screenshot of an email that she had received from the place, and we laughed about it. She said that she replied and said thanks but no thanks, paraphrasing her. Hers was much more long-winded, but you get the idea. She kept receiving emails from that account. Eventually, we recommended to her that she blocked them, and she did. But that didn't stop them from emailing her from other accounts. Each one she blocked only for them to contact her from another email. They would contact her anywhere that email was associated with, stating how concerned they were for her and that she was always welcome with them. It also meant they were able to find her through Facebook, and thus her real-life name and where she worked. They contacted her there, too. For months, it was a complete mess. And then, out of the blue, they just left her alone. Gabby didn't want to go to any of the fairs after that, in case it started up again. The next time we went was, I think, a year or so later. Now, I'm not going to name the cults or the establishment, as it is known what they are, but their cafe is still open as far as I'm aware, and apparently the food is supposed to be really good, too. We didn't see them the last time or any other time we've been there. Not sure why. I don't know if they've been banned or something. I also want to say that I've been watching your channel for a while now, Raven, and I really love your accent. Thanks, I think. I'm not sure how to classify this, but I wanted to share a story about something that happened to a friend and I at a state fair we went to last month. It was a Saturday night, and my friend Clarissa and I had made plans to go about a week prior. We loved going to festivals, but this one was one of our favorite because of a vendor that always came there that had the best elode and kettle corn. We spent the night riding the Ferris wheel, played a few games, and even enjoyed the live show. We didn't know any of the songs playing, but after a few drinks, we could really dance to anything. But this event that I'm going to tell you about kind of expanded throughout our night. As we got to the Ferris wheel, I looked over at the people from below and saw a man taking photos of the crowds. He was dressed normally, wearing jeans and a button-up shirt that was open, with nothing underneath it. He had shoulder-length hair pulled back in a hair tie and had a baseball cap on. He just seemed like a normal photographer, maybe independent, maybe trying to get some candid photos of the crowds for the festival. But what caught my attention was that the guy was using a Polaroid camera. I would expect to see someone with a digital camera with all the fancy lenses, but surprisingly, I only saw him using the Polaroid. I saw the flash go off, the Polaroid came out the front, and I watched him as he waved it and smiled at the crowd. I thought it was different, but I liked it. I liked that this guy was using something a bit more retro and seemed to be enjoying himself. No harm done. As we exited the Ferris wheel, I saw the camera guy walking towards us. He greeted us and asked if we were enjoying our time, and we said yes. Then, he asked if he could take our picture, and we agreed. The fact that he asked about the fair made me think that he probably was hired to take photos, and maybe the Polaroids were just part of a theme he was going for. He took 2 photos of us, gave us 1, and thanked us. Then he pulled out a digital camera and asked if we'd be willing to take a few more photos of us looking at the Ferris wheel, pointing at it, that sort of thing. That's really what made me think he was probably contracted. We agreed, thinking an impromptu photo shoot would be fun, and turned around to start. We at first just pointed at it and laughed because it looked silly from our side. But then it just became natural. We were pointing things out, talking, laughing. The guy then made a comment implying he was done, so we turned around to see him put away the camera and said that we did great. He got a little closer and asked us if we were models, and we said no. He complimented us, saying that we could be with how natural we seemed posing and not looking stiff. After a few seconds of that, he looked around and got even closer to us, like he didn't want anyone to hear the next part. That's when things got creepy. He said if we were interested in modeling that he could get in touch with some people and that could help us get started with our portfolios. We weren't interested in modeling. It's not like we were in the best shape anyways, so it was odd that he would approach us, of all people, But I was curious as to where he was going with this whole thing, so I took the bait. He had this grin on his face that was no longer the nice smile that he greeted us with. It was kind of gross. He said that we could make a lot of money taking some special pictures and videos, because we were the perfect shape and size. He even said that he had a studio we could go check out first too, so that way we would know he was legit. I was at a loss for words. It was completely unexpected and threw me off that I just stood there, feeling my face get hot. Clarissa was never the type to clam up, though. She immediately told him that he was gross and that we weren't interested, and that he needed to walk away before she did something she would regret. The guy just laughed and walked away, saying his offer was still good for the night. We both walked away in the opposite direction of him and just tried to cool off for a moment. We weren't about to let him ruin our night, though. So, after getting it out, we went to find our favorite vendor and enjoyed a snack before we continued on. Afterwards, we went down the lane with all the games and picked some out to play. While I was waiting for Clarissa, I was looking around and spotted the camera guy again still taking photos. But what I noticed when I looked over at him was that he was once again looking at us. I think he realized I noticed him because I saw him quickly move his camera in another direction, which kind of confirmed my suspicions. I'm not the type to try and cause conflicts, so I acted like I didn't see him and put my attention back on Clarissa. Besides, it's not like we could stop him from taking pictures in public places anyways. After a few of the booth games, we noticed that they had a small mini-golf set up, and we decided to see how good we were at it, after the few drinks that we'd had. The answer was not very good, but we were having a blast. But towards the end of the 10th hole, Clarissa got close and said quietly, "Don't look now, but I think that camera guy's following us." And I confirmed that I saw him earlier too. Normally, we wouldn't think much of this, but with his creepy suggestion and him being everywhere we went, it made it feel like he was following or even stalking us. It also didn't help that every time Clarissa looked, he had the camera pointing at us, and he would quickly move like he was caught, making it obvious that his attention was on us. We did our best to ignore him and finish our game, and then immediately walked off to find something else to do to try and escape him. But no matter where we went, even when we walked through the funhouse and tried to delay there, he was around, seemingly waiting for us. I know it was just pictures, but it was weird to fixate on us, especially after what he said. Not to mention, it was pretty obvious when he showed up everywhere we went, despite the large number of people. We were honestly getting a bit annoyed and creeped out, so I suggested that we just leave. It was getting close to 11 anyways, and they started shutting down at midnight. If we left then, we could avoid the crowd of cars trying to leave at the same time. Clarissa seemed conflicted though, and wanted to confront the guy, but I talked her out of it. However, as we were heading out, we saw the guy once more, and I guess it was enough to set her off. He had just taken a picture with the Polaroid, and we both saw the flash. She immediately approached him, doing her fake smile that I knew so well, and asked the guy if he got enough. He looked at her confused, and then she said, "The pictures, asshole. How many did you take of us?" He gave a nervous laugh and said, "Oh, not many." He didn't even deny it. He just said, "Not many?" Clarissa demanded to see the pictures he took, but he refused to show us. He tried to walk away, but she kept following him, demanding the pictures of us. Apparently, there was a cop nearby that had showed up due to an unrelated event, and he heard us shouting at the guy. At this point, we had gotten the attention of some others, and another guy actually came up and took our side, demanding to see the photos too. The cop approached us and asked what was going on, and we explained what had happened. To my surprise, another woman walked up to us with a younger child and asked what was happening, and she told the cop that the camera guy had made some weird comments to her about her daughter as well. She said they just walked away and tried to avoid him after that, though. So now there were 4 of us on this guy's case. A cop standing with us, and people starting to look at us to figure out what exactly was happening. The cop tried to calm everyone down and simply asked the man to see the photos, but he still refused. He did, however, confirm that he was there to take pictures himself for his art project, and that he wasn't any type of paid work for the fair. Unfortunately, there wasn't much more the cop could really do if he refused to share the photos, so we told him that it was best to just leave, and he agreed. He started walking towards the exits, and we all watched. The man walked off, still looking just as pissed as Clarissa, but the rest of us explained more to the cop about what we had witnessed. But as we stood there with the cop, none of us noticed that the man that was trying to defend us had caught back up with the camera guy until we heard someone scream. We all looked over and saw the man on top of the camera guy just wailing on him. The cop took off and broke them, and we watched from a distance. After things calmed down, and we overheard others talking, we learned that the man caught up with the camera guy, snatched his bag that he was carrying, and looked at some of the Polaroids. They were all of females, adults and kids alike. Some close-ups of their face, some of their back ends. If those were on the Polaroids and that close to being out in the open, who knows what pictures were on that digital camera? I guess the man lost it at that point and attacked the guy. We had to give statements since we had a complaint about the guy to begin with, and even had to explain that we didn't know who the other man was. In his words, he was just a civilian tired of seeing creeps get away with stuff. Not that I condone what he did, but he's not wrong. I'm not sure what ended up happening to either of them, to be honest, but we never heard anything more or saw anything about it. All I know is that it went from a completely normal and innocent situation to something creepy in a matter of seconds. I just hope that the camera guy learned his lesson, because the next guy may not go so easy on him. So that, my friends, was a collection of some terrifying carnival, fair, and festivities stories. I'm going to shorten the title, I think, to just Carnival and Fair, because they're basically the same thing to some extent, and that's what these stories are. They're one or the other. So, yeah. Stories that happen at these fun little fun zones. These little places to go for fun times. You know what I mean? Places that are supposed to be for fun, entertaining times. Yeah. Didn't really go to many carnivals or fairs whenever I was a kid. There was one that was pretty popular in the area that was for my school district, but it was more just people trying to sell stuff in their booths. Yeah. Not as entertaining as a kid. More of an adult thing. I feel like I went to one fair, though. I don't remember when. I think I did, though. I don't know why I don't remember it. Like, I have memories of going to one, but I don't remember who I went with, when it was, anything about it. Yeah. I don't have an anecdote for this one, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, sorry. Anyways, hope y'all enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do hit that like button, the thumbs up button. That would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing. That'd be great. If you have a story to share, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so, or send it into the subreddit r/theravensdream. You can also leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts, what you thought of the stories, the video, me as a person, me as a narrator. I don't know, whatever else. What's for lunch, dinner, breakfast, favorite coffee. Just whatever. No limits. Well, some limits, but not really a lot of limits. So, You can also join Patreon memberships to get early access to content like this, do a super thanks, which is a tip to the channel. Visit the KOFI coffee link down below to get a signed poster for a decent price. And yeah, I think that is everything. All that said, friends, hope you're having a beautiful week so far. Hope I see you again here very soon. Tomorrow is Halloween, so hope you remember that you are loved, that you are valid, that you are important. You happen to be the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.